Welcome to the American Mandate. I'm Camden.
I'm Grady.
We got a lot to get to today. We got to talk about Trump's attack on the Houthis over there in Yemen. That situation just seems like a disaster. We'll get to that, and also we want to talk a little bit about Thomas Massie and the CR bill. But Grady, the Columbia student that the Trump organization or administration is trying to kick out of the country. What's kind of the details and the background with that?
All right, so this is a long one. On March 8th, Mr. Mahmoud Khalil, a student activist and negotiator in the 2024 Columbia University pro-Palestine campus occupations, was detained by ICE without having been charged with a crime. The federal immigration agents were acting on orders from the State Department to revoke Khalil's student visa. When the agents were informed that Khalil, a Palestinian and Syrian nationality and Algerian citizenship, is a lawful permanent resident of the United States in possession of a green card, they said that they were going to revoke that instead. He was transported to La Salle Detention Center in Jena, Louisiana. On March 10th, U.S. District Judge of New York, Jesse Furman, halted the Trump administration's attempt to deport Khalil so that its constitutionality may be subject to judicial review, and on Wednesday, March 12th, he extended that block by written order following a hearing in Manhattan federal court. According to court filings, there is no criminal charge against Khalil. Instead, the federal government's argument depends on Section 237A4CI of the Cold War era Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, which provides that migrants whose presence in the U.S. may be removed if the U.S. Secretary of State deems that their presence is incompatible with U.S. foreign policy. Several have noted the relationship of this piece of legislation from 1952 with Cold War era McCarthyism, because that is basically the same way they would expunge communists.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's a little bit of background on the subject. Khalil served as a negotiator for students associated with Columbia University Apartheid Divest, or CUAD, when they were bargaining with Columbia University officials. The CUAD demanded that Columbia stop investing its $14.8 billion endowment in weapons manufacturers or other companies supporting Israel's government. In a 2024 interview, Khalil said, "As a Palestinian student, I believe that the liberation of the Palestinian people and the Jewish people are intertwined and go hand by hand, and you cannot achieve one without the other." He characterized the movement as one for social justice and freedom and equality for everyone. Of concerns about anti-Semitism, Khalil said, "There is, of course, no place for anti-Semitism. What we are witnessing here is anti-Palestinian sentiment that's taking different forms, and anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and racism are some of these forms." At the time, Khalil was on a student visa which required full-time enrollment and could not risk suspension. He avoided activities he believed were high risk and communicated with the university to ensure he would not cause issues. He received an email from Columbia on April 30th, 2024, suspending him for alleged participation in Columbia tent encampments. However, the university retracted the suspension within a day after reviewing their evidence. Columbia University's president office called him personally to apologize for the mistake. In the summer of 2024, Columbia created an Office of Institutional Equity, or OIE, to investigate reports of discrimination on campus. The office opened disciplinary investigations involved a number of students, some of which were based on allegations that they had engaged in anti-Israel or anti-Semitic discrimination. Amy Greer, a lawyer advising several students, said that Columbia was bowing to governmental pressure to suppress and chill protected speech. Khalil was one of the students whose actions the OIE investigated. The investigation involved a number of accusations related to this involvement in CUAD, his alleged help in organizing a march that included participants who purportedly glorified the attacks on October 7th, the acts of alleged discrimination, such as criticism of Zionism. Khalil told the Associated Press, "I have around 13 allegations against me. Most of them are social media posts that I have nothing to do with." The university threatened to block Khalil from graduating for refusing to sign a non-disclosure agreement, but withdrew the threat after Khalil appealed through a lawyer. The online campaign against him. So Khalil was targeted by an online campaign to have him deported. Batar US posted on X in January 2025 that it had given his information to multiple contacts and that ICE was aware of his home address and whereabouts. According to an email Khalil sent Columbia President Katrina Armstrong on March 7th, the campaign was being led by Columbia affiliates Shai Davidai and David Lederer, who had labeled him a security threat and called for his deportation. The New York Times said that Davidai, I'm not good at that name, called on Marco Rubio to deport Mr. Khalil. Khalil urged Armstrong and Columbia to intervene and provide necessary protections to prevent further harm, and asked for legal support for himself and other international students threatened with deportation. After Khalil attended a protest at Barnard College in early March 2025, Ross Glick, a pro-Israel activist, met with aides to United States Senator John Fetterman and Ted Cruz to discuss Khalil. According to Glick, the aides promised to escalate attention to Khalil to the respective senators. According to Khalil's wife, he was subject to an intense campaign in the week before his arrest where false claims were spread about him. The day before his detention, Khalil privately reported to Columbia officials incendiary statements that had inspired hateful responses and calls for his deportation, saying, "I haven't been able to sleep fearing that ICE or a dangerous individual might come to my home." Zeteo reported that those included a threatening post by the pro-Israel organization Batar in January, in which the group claimed that he said Zionists don't deserve to live, a statement Khalil unequivocally denied making. All right, so these are the Trump administration's actions. On the campaign trail, President Trump did consistently vow to cancel visas of international students who take part in pro-Palestinian protests. At a rally on October 16, 2023, he said, "Under the Trump administration, we will revoke student visas of radical anti-American and anti-Semitic foreigners at our colleges and universities, and we will send them straight back home." After taking office, Trump signed Executive Order 14188 on January 29th. Among other things, this executive order singles out institutions of higher education and calls for the deportation of students with visas who have broken laws during any anti-Israel protests since October 7th. Khalil's arrest occurred during a period of heightened federal scrutiny of Columbia University. The day before his arrest, the Trump administration canceled approximately $400 million in federal grants and contracts to Columbia, citing an alleged failure to protect Jewish students from anti-Semitic harassment on campus. Columbia said that it was reviewing the government's actions and remained committed to combating anti-Semitism while ensuring its community safety and well-being. The administration subsequently wrote to 60 other universities under investigation for Title VII violations relating to anti-Semitic harassment and discrimination to warn them of potential penalties. In a social media post on March 4th, Trump said federal funding would stop for any school that allows illegal protests, agitators would be imprisoned or deported, and American students would be expelled or arrested. The U.S. State Department said it would use AI to review thousands of students' visa holders' social media accounts as well as news reports of demonstrations to identify foreign nationals allegedly engaging in anti-Semitism as part of new catch and revoke policy. So his arrest and detention occurred at around 8:30 p.m. on March 8th. Multiple ICE officers took Khalil from his apartment building in Columbia University housing. Khalil's wife, Noor Abdallah, recalled that when they were returning from their home from an iftar dinner, an ICE officer followed them into the building and asked Khalil to confirm his identity, which he did. The officer told Khalil to give his keys to his wife so that she could go back upstairs. When she refused to leave, the officer said, "I will arrest you too." Now, to note, because I found this out after I wrote this, they did not read him his Miranda rights whatsoever. They just took him. I've seen the video. Khalil immediately called his lawyer, Amy Greer, from the building's lobby. She spoke over the phone one of the ICE agents who told her they were acting on State Department orders to revoke Khalil's student visa. Greer said she informed this agent that Khalil was a permanent resident of the United States in possession of a green card. The agent responded that they would revoke that green card instead. When Greer said she needed to see a warrant before Khalil could be detained, the agent hung up. Abdallah said they were not shown a warrant and that within minutes they had handcuffed Mahmoud, took him out into the street, and forced him into an unmarked car. A Columbia University spokesman said law enforcement agents must provide a warrant before entering university property, but declined to say whether the university had received a warrant. for the ICE agents to access Khalil's student housing building. The spokesperson also declined to comment on the arrest. On March 9th, Greer said she was uncertain of Khalil's whereabouts, noting possibly that he could be as far away as Louisiana. Abdallah, who sought to visit him at a detention center in New Jersey, was informed that he was not there. Khalil is detained at LaSalle Detention Center in Louisiana. In a court document, his lawyers later stated that he felt like he was being kidnapped. According to Adam Cox, a professor and immigration expert at New York University, a legal permanent resident can be deported for having been convicted of several criminal offenses, and immigration laws in Congress can make a person deportable for some conduct that is not criminal. A non-citizen can be deported if the State Department has reasonable grounds to believe that their presence or activities in the country would have serious adverse foreign policy consequences. On March 9th, in the Southern District of New York, his attorney, Amy Greer, filed a petition for writ of habeas corpus, which is a legal order compelling someone holding a prisoner to bring them before a court to determine if their detention is lawful, ensuring that nobody's unjustly imprisoned. The next day, Judge Jesse Furman ruled that Khalil could not be removed from the U.S. while the court assessed the case. At a March 12th hearing, the government argued for a chance of venue to either New Jersey or Louisiana, where Khalil had been held in detention. His lawyers asked him to be returned to New York. Furman ordered that Khalil be allowed 2 attorney-client privilege phone calls, and that both the government and Khalil's lawyers submit plans on March 14th for further arguments. Khalil has reportedly been scheduled for a hearing before a Louisiana immigration judge on March 27th. Khalil has not been charged with a crime. He's not alleged to have engaged in any activity legally prohibited to the U.S. residents, and authorities have not alleged he provided material support to a prescribed organization. Removal procedures were initiated under Section 23784CI of the Immigration Nationality Act, which permits deportation of lawful residents if the Secretary of State believes that their presence prevents a risk or potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences. Khalil's lawyer and attorneys have called this an obscure and rarely used section of the Act. Judge Marianne Trump Berry previously found this section unconstitutional in Maciel v. Reno, though the ruling was reversed by a court of appeals for reasons unrelated to the constitutional issues, which the court of appeals did not address. On March 13th, attorneys for Khalil filed an amended petition for writ of habeas corpus, adding Trump, Rubio, and others as respondents. In addition to Amy Greer, Khalil's legal representation includes attorneys from the American Civil Liberties Union, Creating Law Enforcement Accountability and Responsibility, CLEAR, and the Center for Constitutional Rights. CLEAR is a legal aid group in New York. On March 13th, the New York chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations said it had sued Columbia on behalf of Khalil and several other students, and it also sued the House of Representatives Committee on Education and Workforce on grounds related to Columbia's compliance with the committee's demand to give committee student records. All right, so I'm going to run through a couple of statements from the Trump administration. So this is from Marco Rubio. When you come into the United States as a visitor, which is what a visa is, which is how this individual entered this country on a visitor's visa, you are here as a visitor, we can deny you that visa. If you tell us, hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a visa, I'm a big supporter of Hamas, a murderous, barbaric group that kidnaps children and that rapes teenage girls, that takes hostages, that allows them to die in captivity, that returns more bodies than live hostages. If you tell us that you're in favor of a group like this, and if you tell us when you apply for a visa, and by the way, I intend to come to your country on a student visa and rile up all kinds of anti-Jewish student, anti-Semitic activities, I intend to shut down your universities. If you told us all of these things when you applied for a visa, we would deny your visa. I hope we would. If you actually end up doing that once you're in this country on such a visa, we will revoke it. And if you end up having a green card, not citizenship, but a green card as a result of that visa, while you're here in those activities, we're going to kick you out. It's as simple as that. This is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with. No one has a right to a student visa. No one has a right to a green card, by the way. So when you apply for a student visa or any visa to enter the United States, we have a right to deny you for virtually any reason. But I think being a supporter of Hamas and coming into our universities and turning them upside down and being complicit in what are clearly crimes of vandalization, complicit in shutting down learning institutions. There are kids at these schools that can't go to class. You paid them all this money to these high-priced schools, and they're supposed to be of great esteem, and you can't even go to class. You're afraid to go to class because these lunatics are running around with covers on their face, screaming terrifying things. If you told us that's what you intended to do when you came to America, we would never have let you in. And if you do it once you get in, we're going to revoke it and kick you out. Okay, this is from J.D. Vance. A green card holder, even if I might like that green card holder, doesn't have an indefinite right to be in the United States of America. American citizens have different rights from people who have green cards, from people who have student visas. And so my attitude on this is not fundamentally about free speech. And to me, yes, it's about national security, but it's also more importantly about who do we as American public decide who gets to join our national community. If the Secretary of State and the President decide this person shouldn't be in America and they have no legal right to stay here, it's as simple as that. The interviewer asked him if he sees more deportations happening. He said, I think we'll certainly see some people get deported on student visas if we determine that it is not in the best interest of the United States to have them in our country. So yeah, I don't know how high that number is going to be, but you're going to see more people. This is from press secretary. In fact, Secretary Rubio reserves the right to revoke visa of Mahmoud Khalil, and I'm glad you brought this up. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, the Secretary of State has the right to revoke a green card or visa for individuals who have adversarial to the foreign policy and national security interests of the United States of America. And Mahmoud Khalil was an individual who was given privilege of coming to this country to study at one of our nation's finest universities and colleges. He took advantage of that opportunity, of that privilege, by siding with terrorists, Hamas terrorists who have killed innocent men, women, and children. This is an individual who organized group protests that not only disrupted college campus classes and harassed Jewish American students and made them feel unsafe on their own college campus, but also distributed pro-Hamas propaganda flyers with the logo of Hamas. That is the behavior and activity this individual engaged in. I have those flyers on my desk that were provided to me by the DHS. I thought about bringing them into the briefing room to share with all of you, but I didn't think it was worth the dignity of this room to bring that pro-Hamas propaganda. But that's what this individual distributed on campus of Columbia University, and this individual, we're not going to tolerate individuals having the privilege of studying in our country and then siding with pro-terrorist organizations that have killed Americans. So, government officials have informally accused Khalil of leading activities aligned with Hamas. The government has not publicly provided any evidence of this claim. Khalil denies the accusations, and his attorneys called it false and preposterous. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also alleged that Khalil organized protests that distributed flyers with the Hamas logo. As of March 11th, neither Leavitt nor ICE have publicly provided proof of the existence of such flyers. The Trump administration defended its action with Secretary Marco Rubio announcing plans to revoke more visas. The Department of Homeland Security Deputy Secretary Troy Edgar defended the detention when asked to explain what conduct merited his removal from the U.S. and specifically how he supported Hamas. Edgar said, I think if he would have declared he was a terrorist, we would never have let him in. Throughout the interview, Edgar incorrectly called Khalil a visa holder, despite being corrected that Khalil is a legal permanent resident. So this is my final thesis. Let me be clear. Anti-Semitism is not a crime. Green card holders or lawful permanent residents are protected under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. However, non-citizens can be deported for certain speech-related crimes, while green card holders have the First Amendment protections. Speech that incites violence, supports terrorism, or threatens national security can lead to legal consequences, including potential deportation. Having said that, I have yet to find any evidence to suggest Mr. Khalil has committed a crime that warrants his arrest. Green card holders are also protected under the Due Process Clause of both the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment. So if indeed Mr. Khalil has committed a crime, then why not provide the evidence? If the State Department insists that this is a matter of national security, let's see the proof. You're separating a permanent resident from his pregnant wife and threatening deportation. I think the American people deserve to know why. And if it turns out that he is being deported simply for anti-Semitic rhetoric, then I'm afraid this sets a very dangerous precedent and this calls into question this administration's commitment to protecting free speech. So that's what I have. Sorry, it was a long one.
No, it's good to have a lot of background. I think my few takeaways from the whole thing is one, not even about the situation, in the sense that we elected Donald Trump to secure our border and to deport illegal immigrants to our country, specifically those of MS-13 gangs, of all South American gangs, all these people who are criminal offenders who are raping and killing people, say like with I forget Lake and Riley,
right.
And that those are the issues that we put forth.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about a secondary issue of talking about issues on campus and who we should allow into our country and who should have the privilege of being at our schools, okay, but that's a secondary issue. Our main issue is illegal immigration.
Yeah, so when we hear the ICE like halted their deportations to focus on this, we're just like, what's
that's
the
a huge
priority
issue.
here? What's the priority here?
That's the huge issue. And it's taking resources away to do that. Even if they weren't halting it, it takes resources, ICE agents, because it wasn't one guy that showed up.
Right.
It was, you could call it a whole posse.
The interesting thing is,
up.
like, there's certainly people that engaged in criminal activity, provable criminal activity, but why would they start with this guy?
Well, I can tell you why. And because this is the best one that they had.
Yeah.
And that is depressing. That tells you that everyone who started an incited violence, all these protesters who are pro-Hamas, all like that, if that's the main issue, if the pro-Hamas, the pro-terrorist thing, that's the issue, they're all Americans.
Yeah.
Like full-on natural-born citizen Americans. And that calls into the question of why Trump wanted to get rid of natural-born citizenship. Because that is a whole separate issue. This is the best foreign national person that you could find as the Trump administration as the poster boy to be like, do not come to this country and incite violence.
Yeah.
And if that's your best bet, the guy who didn't incite violence, who came to the country legally on a visa, who got a green card, who then has a wife that's American, who has a pregnant,
I didn't put this in, but he also was like basically a negotiator for like the embassy, the Syrian embassy in Britain at one point, and like the spokesperson for that embassy literally came out and said like, this guy's a very nice guy. I don't believe any of these statements. Like, he's negotiated for us because he's from Syria and Algeria, a couple other things. He's got like nationality there.
Oh, but here's the big issue though. Us Republicans, we all talk about how, man, look at the Democrats. They're throwing Trump in prison. They're trying to do all these things. Like, look what they did to Pierre Navarro. Look what they did to Steve Bannon. This is unprecedented. How, if this was the Democrat side, they never do it. And so now Republicans, we're in power, and we're deciding we're going to go after people for inciting violence. It's like it's idiotic.
Yeah.
That's what I will say.
I want to make a comparison, and I really don't want to make this comparison, but it has to be said. It's pretty rich coming from Donald Trump, who is in defense of January 6th and pardon those people. And then to come out and say, oh, because this guy was a part of these protests and maybe some of the people of these protests have broken some laws, that somehow everybody's complicit. It's like, okay, what about your supporters that walked into the capital of our country? Many of them didn't do anything wrong. They just happened to be there. And you argued that the Biden administration unfairly prosecuted many of these people, and they weren't even given their constitutional rights of due process simply because they were at this protest. And this is the same thing, like almost exactly. You're literally using the same language. Oh, because he was there, he's complicit. Okay, so are you going to pardon him because you pardon your supporters? Basically, now you can make an argument it's not exactly the same situation. Fair enough, but it's the same argument.
It's worse on the January 6th side.
Right.
That's what I would say. I think whatever you have to say about this, the kicking someone out of this country, I think, like, I'm all for closing the borders, not letting much immigration in, period. At this point, until we figure out.
If this guy were to apply for a student visa, you can make the argument to not let him in, and I'm not going to argue that.
No,
but he's already in here as a permanent resident.
Yeah, and but that's besides the point. We can block off, and then we can start deporting people who are illegally in this country, who are committing federal criminal crimes. Okay, I'm all for that. When you come to this country, there's an understanding of you have rights in this country that you don't have in the rest of the world. The United States of America, no matter all our problems, we give the most rights to everyday individuals than any other country that are considered God-given rights. You have the right to protect yourself. You have the right that people can't just come into your house without a warrant. You have a right that they can't just station troops in your house. You have a right to an attorney, and if not, they will be provided for you. And the number one thing, you have a right to free speech. Like, no. I'm not going to be arrested here for saying that, even though Biden administration was interesting, but remember the whole thing about, like, if you spoke out against COVID, we can talk about that. People were getting arrested, and Republicans were like, this is awful. This is terrible. We have the right to free speech. Why are you arresting people? Why are you silencing people on these platforms? And we were all up in arms about it. Why? And because the Democratic Party and Biden were saying, well, it's misinformation, it's dangerous, it's going to kill people. Well, what is the difference in the situation here if he's at a say the best intentions is he's at a rally because he's supporting Palestine and Palestine decided to vote in Hamas? No. I think that is the only argument you can make, is that he supports the state of Palestine. He does not like all the genocide that's happening there.
I mean, it's the same argument. Like, if we were in a war against another country and we were losing badly, and we voted in, Trump or something, and then they say, well, and let's not say Trump. Let's say we voted in like a really bad group that was running our country, but half of the country voted them in. It's like, well, I support Americans, not the American government. Oh, so you support the American government? It's kind of like there's a lot of people there that probably didn't, and they're probably just getting bombed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's my argument. What was I gonna say? I don't know. In any case, this is just really bad. It just seems like they just abandon their principles when it comes to criticism of Israel. That's what it seems. I mean, am I wrong in that assumption? It seems like they just abandon all this, like, oh, we're about free speech and all this other stuff. Oh, but we're about no wars. Oh, but when it comes to Israel, that's an exception.
What we're doing right now is Donald Trump is creating a line in the sand of being like, these are our issues. And the difficulty is a lot of the stuff he preached is not actually happening. And like saying this stuff on campus, there's issues with us sending a ton of money to these colleges. So he's using the anti-Semitic umbrella to then be like, this is your issue, we're now going to cut the funds, and making these universities come in line. That's not the way to do it.
And I don't have a problem with like not sending money to universities. Also, I don't have a problem with like I don't have a problem with what was I going to say? Just keep going. I keep losing my train of thought.
Donald Trump is trying to find different poster boy people to do these things. And the anti-Semitism argument has just...
Oh, I know what I was going to say.
It's idiotic because, as you said to start, anti-Semitism is not illegal in this country.
It's not a crime.
In the same sense, when someone calls us racist, someone calls us homophobic, even though that's not a real thing, someone calling you a Semite...
Right, I could sit here and yell about like black people, and you couldn't charge me with a crime. You could say, well, you're a raging racist, and be like, well, yeah, that'd be true, but... That's not a crime.
You're a raging racist.
You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Like you could shit on women for 20 minutes and be like, "Oh, this guy's doesn't like women. He's a bad person." But you can't charge me with a crime unless I like beat a woman or something. You know what I mean? Like if they're not attacking, listen, I'm all for deporting students if they're committing legitimate bad acts, like legitimate criminal acts, and they're here on a visa. That makes sense to me. But if there's no evidence,
not criminal.
If there's no evidence of anything being done criminal, and they're just criticizing Israel's, Hamas situation, that's not a crime. And if you try to make it to be a crime, that sets a very dangerous precedent.
Agreed.
Did you want to move on to Yemen, because I know we're kind of short on time?
Yeah, I do, and I think it adds kind of right into your comments about how the United States has basically just abandoned being critical of Israel and also has abandoned its principle of not wanting to get into new wars.
Yeah.
And so basically what happened is Trump ordered an attack while he was golfing on the Houthis in Yemen. And he said this was the decisive and powerful military action, and they have waged an unrelenting campaign of piracy, violence, and terrorism against American and other ships, aircraft, and drones. Trump had posted to his social media platform, Truth Social. We will use overwhelming lethal force until we have achieved our objective. Here's the problem with this situation. I saw a lot of people who are Trump supporters, who are MAGA supporters, who are even just general Republicans being like, we're attacking terrorists. And I was texting you about it. I didn't know much about the situation. I was like, the whole point was we were attacking terrorists. It's not the same situation as attacking a country and getting us into a war. Looking into it for more than 5 minutes, you understand that the Houthis have claimed that they've attacked American ships. That is it. That is the whole basis of this whole thing. Is in the past 5 years there has been claim that the Houthis attacked the ships. They haven't sunk any American ships. They haven't actually. There's no evidence that they even attacked American vessels. They're trying to take claim for it just to be like, oh, fear us, we're attacking the United States of America. That is it. The whole Houthis, what they've been doing is they've attacked some ships with Israel. They've attacked other commercial vehicles in the area. They've sunk ships. But Trump's whole argument does not hold water, because we would be going to a full-scale war with the Houthis if they sunk American ships.
Yeah.
There's a reason we're not. And that is the huge issue here, is that, yes, the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas, all these terrorist organizations are attacking Israel.
And they are backed by Iran.
Allow Israel to do its thing. United States, why are we getting involved in this?
Exactly.
Why? And here's the worst part of the situation. It's not, because then it's like, if it's terrorists, okay, right? It's just another day. We're bombing. We killed the ISIS leader. We killed the ISIS leader again, like a week ago or something.
They're just gonna keep promoting somebody. And
they just keep promoting someone, and then Trump's gonna put his page on Truth Social, with his portrait and being like, we killed the ISIS leader, and it's like part 3, part 4, part 5. The problem with this is that we killed 9 civilians.
Yeah.
And
this is the whole argument against terror wars, man. I don't care what the rate good versus bad is. It's like, dude, at the end of the day, there's a lot of human suffering. I mean, this goes back during 2015 with Obama. I mean, the campaign against Yemen with Saudi Arabia on the side of Al Qaeda, by the way, which is treason to side with a terrorist organization. We backed Al Qaeda in Yemen to attack the Houthis. What does that say about it? So at the end of the day, this is just such bad decision making from Trump. I don't get it. I do get it, but I don't want to really get into that subject. But you know what I mean.
No, it's not about the point of not getting into it, not getting at I get it. I don't get. No, it's a plain and simple. It does not make sense optically. It doesn't make sense logistically. It doesn't make sense for American first policy.
Right.
It doesn't make sense for. It's not even talking about American isolationists. This doesn't make sense as far as our country's security goes,
because we just posting it on X and trying to make it this big great thing and oh my God, look at us. It's like
he's still in the honeymoon phase and acting like every decision he's made is what the American people voted for.
This is so bad, and you're posting about it oh, isn't this great? Or bombing Yemen.
But this gets into kind of,
it's honestly one of the most disturbing things I've seen from him. To make a post about this is so great, we're bombing Yemen, then I hear that 9 civilians died. I'm like, this is disgusting. I don't even have the stomach for that. That's just gross.
This is kind of the side thing. I was messaging, texting you yesterday about the issues with following and listening to one person.
Yeah.
And whether it is someone that you highly respect, and there's a lot of commentators out there that it's we cannot gather all the information. You and I, if we're working 12-hour work days, we cannot come home and just spend 12 hours researching everything and understand. It's a full-time job, and we trust political commentators to then do the research for us and to tell us what's going on. It's the same thing for Trump. The problem is, if we put all our faith in one individual or even a couple individuals, say you're putting in the Daily Wire as your like that. I trust them to do this.
Even Dave Smith. I love Dave Smith, but he ain't right about everything, and he doesn't have all the cards. But I trust him to have at least done a good amount of research, and it's a good starting point for my.
That's the thing, is that all these commentators should be a starting point, and then it's like, here's the facts that they chose to bring. Okay, let's fill in the gaps there.
Yeah.
And this is the issue with Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. Is the MAGA movement it was a great push to get Donald Trump in the office and make sure Biden and Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton were not in charge of our country. No. So Barack Obama was not in charge of our country because they were warmongering people who wanted to continue the wars. And our economy was just going kaput under them.
Goes to show that no matter who's in office, whether it's Trump or Biden or Obama, it doesn't matter. The military-industrial complex must continue. It must. It has to. They won't allow it not to. So if we're ending Ukraine, we got to attack Yemen. Something's got to get. I mean, they have $50 billion investments in this. They need it to continue. That's the most disgusting thing, is that it's self-perpetuating and it's never ending. And
that's Thomas Massie's whole point, and it's why everyone, like, this is kind of come up because Thomas Massie has been talking about the Yemen thing, and we're not going to really be able to get into the CR bill, but I just looked under his posts, and it was just Republicans being like, I'm really thinking that you're not America first, you're just anti-Trump, and you're just all that. Yeah. The whole point of America first, keep us out of foreign conflicts, protect the homeland, America, make our economy strong, and then make good trades with other countries to make it so our prices in America are lowered.
Yeah.
That is the American first policy. American first, yes. You can be America first and be like, I think we should invest money in the Israel-Palestine area to then fix that area. You can say that, I want to send humanitarian supplies to Ukraine because I feel bad for that area. When there's an issue is when we're funding the Ukrainian-Russian war, when we're funding the Israeli and Palestinian war, when we're funding the UK as they're just allowing illegal immigration to just destroy their country, when we're funding NATO and countries like Germany is just like, yeah, we don't care about free speech.
Right.
When we're funding terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, and through back doors we're funding places like ISIS, that stuff happens. When we're using U.S. aid to then fund all these black op organizations, that's our issue. None of that is America first.
Agreed.
If we're under American first, our job is to fight. Okay, should we be isolationist, or should we work with other countries? I'm on the side that we should work with other countries and strengthen our country through trade. This whole thing is not American first. It's an American isolationist, and it's an America, let's lower our population to like 300 million, and let's make it. It's the weird thing that's come around and turned into like, let's make a uniparty for the Republican side that I didn't see coming.
Yeah. Can I
go for it?
You got 2 minutes. I think I can fit the Massey thing in. So, brief summary. Basically, this CR bill is terrible. It continues Biden's spending levels. It raises the debt by $2 trillion and raises our deficit by hundreds of billions of dollars. Right. Massey voted against it because it's a really bad bill. And Trump, like we talked about, threatened to primary him, and the right attacked him and all this other stuff. And Rand Paul ended up doing the same thing. He didn't get any attack, by the way. Just, because he endorsed Trump and Massey didn't. But at the end of the day, it came down to like this the last couple days. Chuck Schumer was like, we're not voting for this. This is a bad bill, which is true, but he liked the bill. It's all fake fighting. And Massey made this point. He goes, this is all political theater. This is fake fighting. They've already made a deal behind closed doors. If I were to convince the entire Freedom Caucus to vote against this bill, the Democrats would provide 30 votes, and it would pass the House. He goes, you're going to find out when it passes the Senate, when 8 Democrat senators flip, you're going to find out that this is all bullshit, and that behind closed doors, they've already made this deal, and that the Uniparty doesn't care about the debt. They want to kick the can down the road. They want to continue spending levels. And he was right. As it turns out, Chuck Schumer, they're like, oh, Chuck Schumer caves. It's like, no, Chuck Schumer, he just, at the last minute, he did what he was supposed to. He voted for it. And he told his other senators to vote for it, like Fetterman and them. So at the end of the day, Massey's always right, as it seems. And I don't know, man. I'm tired of kicking the can down the road. We're never going to, it doesn't help. It doesn't keep Doge cuts into law. It doesn't do any of that. So
I think the two quick takeaways from it is, one, the divide is making you and I argue on the Republican side and have you and I argue with Democrats.
Yeah.
That's the point. It's keeping us divided. They're not divided.
Yeah.
Second piece, you could say in the best case scenario for Donald Trump, if Chuck Schumer really didn't want to do this bill, Donald Trump and the Republicans actually boxed them into a corner, the Democrats, because there's two different sides of them doing this. The one side of it is we don't want to keep funding the government in this way. We want to have resolution. This is Biden's resolution that they're continuing.
Yeah.
So they'd see hypocrites if they're like, oh, we don't want to fund Trump's America. You're not funding Trump. You're continuing the bill from last year with Biden. And so it'd be hypocritical, and so they can't exactly do it. But then, and if they allow the government to shut down, the Republicans can be like, look, the CR bill, like we Republicans continued it to keep our government open, and the Democrats decided that they did not want to keep the government over. Look at all these hypocrites.
While there might be truth to that, at the end of the day, they all knew they were voting on this days before they started fighting about it. So all the fighting in public is the real political theater.
100%. What I'm just trying to get at is that
I'm not saying the Democrats didn't do it begrudgingly, but they should have supported it because it's their spending bill.
The Republicans boxed the Democrats into a political corner that they couldn't get out of.
True.
But the Democrats, I will say, this is the other point. The Democrats were always going to vote for this bill.
Of course.
They weren't boxed into a corner in the traditional sense. It would be like me putting you in a corner and being like, okay, you either have to be supported of like abortion or not be supportive of it. And it's like, you better choose right now or this person's going to die. And then you're like, well, of course I don't support abortion.
Let's be honest.
You're not really boxing me in a corner.
Yeah, because let's be honest. If this were a good Republican bill, they would have shut down the government. Like, no question in my mind. If it was truly Doge cuts and all this shit, they would not have voted for it. So
exactly.
That pretty much concludes this show. Yeah.
A lot of topics, a lot of just in-depth stuff today. But yeah, we're back to doing this daily on the weekdays. And so thank you for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow on American Mandate.
Have a good one.